here. Welcome to the party, people. Party people.
A mortar team is on standby to soften up the perimeter so you can get through. Be ready to move.
Okay, let's go. What are we doing? What are we waiting for? Let's get our asses in there. Nah, we can clear it with 2 people.
They've got some kind of active protection system intercepting our border rounds. Only
An hour and a half?
through.
Okay.
Shit. You have to push through, Agent. This is our one shot of this place.
Alright. Sounds good. I'll take plate 1. Nah. I'll take Overwatch at 3, thank you.
System disrupted.
I hate these drones. Oh my god. Follow us because you have reached the milestone for following me. It's pretty self-explanatory, but you've been following me since day 1. See, if you go in to your milestone follower, click on it, it should show you how long you've been following. Or if you type followage in the chat, it should show you as well. But at the moment, my commands are all messed up for some reason. I don't know why. Wow, that hurt a lot.
Vital signs critical.
Oh my god. Alright, we're both up. We're both down on the tower. Yeah, I'm down again. Yes, I'm down again. Don't blame me, guys. I've only done this 7 times. Don't be blaming me. I've only done this 7 times.
An agent needs assistance.
Oh, just stay still, drone, would ya? Oh my god. Tell Wonton Numbam 1 Asian wants to know when he ever sleeps. Wonton, when do you ever sleep? When do you ever sleep, man? Tommy, apparently he just got up, man. He just got up.
Oh, motherfucker.
Oh, fuck.
Did nobody play music? Nobody play music, please.
Porque lo que está streameando es una porquería.
I mean, each of their own thing.
Muriendo en todas las esquinas y...
Muriendo.
Y 2 personas viéndolo, el hermano y la mamá. Para que no llores.
¡Mírenme, mírenme!
Para tener un view.
Alright, so one time he can hear you now, so you can tell him yourself that you had your 5-minute power nap.
Yeah, I had a 5 minute.
Unusual energy signature detected.
Am I going to my normal spot?
Terminal. Get in there
Sure.
and see if you can
I
pinpoint
mean,
the source.
we can do, where's your normal spot anyways?
Computers.
Sure, yeah, computers.
Yeah, so chat, we got some Spanish speakers in here and some English speakers. So, don't be alarmed if you hear other language. And
¿Lo han tumbado?
don't try
Claro,
and
dos.
translate if you cannot translate.
¿Lo han tumbado 2 veces algún marquí?
I know
no.
some words.
Yeah.
That's it.
I know uno
Mira,
and cuatro.
hay una forma para tumbar y corre hacia el de la
So
torreta.
everyone in the chat here.
Si le pegas por el costado del hombro, lo vuelves a bajar antes de que desactive la torreta. Hay forma de bajarlo
Oh,
2
sí,
veces.
sí. Le pegas el lado izquierdo, ¿no? De él,
Sí.
para tumbarlo. Por la misma mochila, pero por el lado izquierdo.
Sí. Nada más por el hombro.
Sí, pero es el que, pues si tú lo puedes hacer, pues, perfecto. Porque no creo que muchos lo pueden hacer así. Ya sé que tiene que ser rápido, porque si no tira la granada para que ya no sirva la torreta.
Mira, yo lo he hecho con un amigo, sí lo hemos hecho, pero sí es un poquito difícil. Se puede intentar, si no sale la primera, pues lo hacemos normal.
Sí, de todos modos no es como que va a caer inmediatamente, es nomás como para pegarle 2 veces a la primera vez cuando sale.
Listen.
Ok, mira, necesito que lo bajen aquí.
Ok.
¿Para qué? Para, por ejemplo,
Para que no corra y luego tire la más distancia para que tire la granada, ¿no?
entonces, haz de cuenta que lo agarras de lado y lo bajas. Entonces, cuando él gira y camina hacia acá, hay una posibilidad de darle por un costado del hombro, que sería más o menos así.
Sí.
Oh, I know what you guys are talking about. Never mind.
Then he starts walking over here a little bit, and you take him down again to do damage 2 times.
Oh, no. I think I've seen this, but I don't usually do it on 45. We do it on 41. We do the first rotation and then we do 41.
I
No,
have not
el Ranger
ever
dice
done
que
that.
lo ha hecho así, pero lo ha hecho cuando está en la 41. Pero como sea. De todos modos no es para tumbar, no es como que lo vas a tumbar como la segunda vez, pero
I am just here to push computers and shoot shit.
no es para hacer más daño, ¿no?
Sí. De hecho, es para hacerlo más daño.
Sí. Sí, pero como tú dices, hacemos así de regular, no importa.
Porque, bueno, de hecho lo hemos tumbado y las 2 veces le haces daño a la cabeza, como normalmente.
Sí.
Pero te digo, si es difícil, más no es posible.
Ok. Hay que poner todos en posición. So, porque tú más o menos sí lo has hecho. Después en la 45 si quieres.
Dancing around.
So who's gonna grab the eye? Who's gonna grab the eye?
Entonces,
That's not folks.
Who's grabbing it? Who's grabbing the eye?
No.
What are you running?
Freaking likely.
I need to know who's gonna run it. Who's gonna run him?
I got 323,000 armor, but I've only got 27,000.
ok.
Estoy en la torreta ya.
Bueno, para bajarlo,
I rely highly on my armor.
2.
Okay, we're getting ready, guys. Ready. Alright, go.
My whole build expecting to explode. And headshot.
Oh god.
Yeah, that was a good shot. Whoever got that shot, that was a nice headshot.
Yeah, that was. It's probably one time. It's probably one time. One time's good at shooting.
Can't be Wonton, he was still doing his own jig over here.
Wonton is very, very experienced with this shit. I can attest to that.
Swear to God, every time he's about to come out, I get your heart straight away. Every time.
Why?
Why?
Is somebody using voices or no?
Down. I don't think so. Okay.
Your armor up, flat.
He's gonna drop him again. Yeah, I know, it's trying. No. We're gonna bring it around. Como normal.
Started?
Yeah.
Nice, River, nice.
Yeah.
Oh no, you don't. Oh fuck. Oh fuck.
Guys.
This is why we never do it on straight away on 45 because of the ads. We take the first rotation and then do a 41.
Bravo.
I got it.
I got it.
Shoot his chest. I got his chest down.
Alright.
Bien, gordo. Acá estoy.
They're gonna have to go 45 guys as well. Bear in mind.
He's going down. Okay. Bring him around.
Dale ahí la torreta.
Ahí voy. I'll do my, going down, he's down. Down, damage. No damage.
No hubo daño.
No.
A ver, tomarlos en NPC.
And he's dropped them. Take care of that, guys. I'm bringing him around. Traen alrededor. En el pecho. Chest piece.
Computer.
Charlie.
I have. Alright.
Defense system reactivation aborted.
Can you guys take
I'm
a little wider?
unstoppable.
A little weak there, right?
Yeah, I knew I was about to go down. I knew I was about to hit the deck.
Can I? Nope.
I'm
Apparently
getting
not.
stuff.
Beachy sniper.
Well, that drone was immune for some reason.
Down. Damage. One more time. One other más. Reactivating. Nobody hit the computers. It was all of them.
All of them? Hey.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Ranger?
I didn't even hear it! Don't be blaming my
It's all
ass.
of them right now. It's all of them now, I think.
That's not all of them right now. Let's switch it off.
No. Yeah. It overheated. Se recalentó.
Damn it, he went into the circle before I could put him down.
Traelo al 45 si pueden.
Ahí está, ahí mismo.
Ahí mismo en 41.
Bueno, ahí le pudieron haber dado. Porque acá están arriba los
Es que la torreta se calentó demasiado.
Scooch this way, please. Oh no. Ooh, what are you doing?
I got it back. Tengo el ojo. Okay. Get him down. Damage.
Give me everything you got, guys.
Nope.
Nothing there.
Everybody, too many people are down.
Shit, I'm out of ammo. Ready for ammo.
There's too many ads over here, and the nodes up.
Yeah, we gotta get them nodes down over there.
Llévatelo porque lo vas a tumbar otra vez.
All of them except Alpha.
I'm going to C.
So-
Oh, no, I'm Yes, stay.
I got B.
No, 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 no.
I'm trying to move off away from it. It's too late. Hit arrow.
He's going down, he's going down, he's down, yo, le cayó. Ah.
No,
This is a messy way to do it, man.
Yeah, it is.
This is a real messy way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have done the first rotation at 45. Stop the ads from building up so much, and then went to 41 and stuff.
Yeah.
It's the way we usually do it.
ya la destruyó.
It always works when we do it that way too.
Don't mess around with a good thing, right?
O empezamos, o estamos bien.
Vamos.
I got you, Penguin. I'm sleeping on the job.
No. Ya me va a tumbar. I'm gonna go down. Yeah, just clean it. This one off.
I got the
Sí, vamos a.
¿Volteamos?
Get on the
Sí, volteamos.
Tenemos muy buen daño, pero el problema fue las computadoras.
Sí.
Con la primera,
La última nunca escuchamos, no la escuchamos. Por eso.
Are we waving?
Yeah.
What? Okay. Wait. Let's try it with the single rotation of 45 then go to 41 and do the double. It keeps the ads down. It keeps it at the ads down.
I see. Just keep it normal, but
Yeah, I mean you can clear the ads out on 45 straight away, and then you move to 41. And the only place 41 comes out is at the back of 41.
porque daño traemos y bastante.
Oh, sí. ¿No estamos bien?
Why not we just do it the way we done it yesterday? We're working fine. I mean,
Yeah.
why are we changing shit?
Yeah,
Nomás hay que hacerlo normal, nomás.
got 300,000 freaking armor. I ain't grabbing no eye. Oh.
I'm just changing stuff like that. That's because this is not working out well.
My armor would be dookie as hell.
Uno.
Espera. Estoy haciendo algo rápido.
Remember guys, if you're new in here, new into the stream, new into the channel, hit that follow button, hit that like button guys. You'll feel pretty...
Still watching, by the way, Ranger. Gotta support them.
You will feel accomplished once you hit that follow button. You've accomplished getting me to helping me get to 200. Let's get it. Let's get those 200 tonight, guys. I know we can get it. I know we can get it.
Sí. Y pues no está puesto bien ahorita como lo quiero, pero...
Hit that follow button, guys. Hit that like button.
Para jugar
Get them reactions going out. Get them shares going.
Aquí trabaja bien.
Everything helps. Everything helps.
What are we waiting for?
Yo lo ando trayendo y anoche me anduvo bien en la radio. I'm just waiting for
There.
Alright.
Okay. Listo. Ready. Oh, nothing. Okay.
Uno, dos, tres.
Show me your build, please. Okay, give me a minute. Give me 2 seconds.
Defense system node disabled. Defense system node disabled. Defense system node.
Okay, so it is basically an explosives AR build. High damage and explosives AR.
Okay, téngalo.
Nothing too fancy, nothing too special.
Igual como normal, eso nomás lo voy a traer para acá y... Ah, no.
Justo. Se me pegó mucho.
Ahí te cambia. Down. Damage.
can't. I got a freaking 1-ton big fat head in my way.
Alright.
You're right, buddy. You're right.
Daño. Computers. Alpha.
Alpha? Is that it?
Alpha. Yeah, that's it. Alpha.
Demasiado en el PC. Oh, no.
Ahí voy, la disable. Voy. NPC is on 45. Yep.
Alright, bring it down,
Boss down.
He's down. Perfect. Ese daño que está haciendo creo que es un chingo.
41, estoy en 41.
41.
Ahora acaso, trépate. Trépate.
Order 45. Oh no.
Oh, what? How did they reactivate?
We didn't get it. No, I'm gonna go down. Me va a tumbar. Chest piece.
Somebody's gonna have to get on that node and start taking them down. Good shit.
I got chest piece.
Hell out of it.
Oh my god. Ya cayó.
Down.
Damage. No, not enough damage right there.
No.
Got the big clear guy.
Yellow bar.
41.
I got the
Everybody just need for
Where do I put him? I got the eye.
I'll be here at 45. Clockwise.
I don't have.
That is.
One time.
I don't have the eye.
I've got the eye.
Bravo Charlie.
Somebody's gonna have to get them.
No,
we're clearing them, but we're not clearing them.
pero ya les dije también.
Sí, es que
We need to clear them as a team.
falta limpieza.
Sí.
We need 2 people in the middle. So who's gonna do it?
You can have everyone in the middle. It doesn't matter. It's just that people need to start clearing ads.
No. I'm talking about the
Computers.
computers.
Yeah, no, I know. Everyone can be in the middle.
Range is in the middle, and I think
That doesn't matter.
one
It's just-
time's in the middle as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, Penguin's in here as well.
Yeah, but at the same time, everyone has to be clearing ads. Even
I
if
was-
you're in the middle.
I was clearing ads, but
I mean, I got great view of everywhere from the middle, so
Who's got, ¿quién tiene assets?
go again on
Nadie
this.
tiene
Yeah.
assets?
Here you go, buddy.
Bruso.
Here's the
Oh.
bill.
Okay, yeah. So Bruce. So Bruso's in the middle. So it's Bruso and
an holding mask with perfect
Ranger.
concussion.
What are you running?
I haven't been able to find it yet.
There's
Thanks
5
for the
people
follow,
in the
buddy.
middle.
Welcome to the stream. Much appreciated.
there's supposed to be 2 in the middle. pulling the rest out here.
No, not really. Like I said, it's only taking care of the ads. That's all we need.
Normal devastating gloves.
A ver,
And
Latis,
spark on the
¿quieres tú traerlo?
for the holstered
Sí, yo lo agarro.
Okay. The Merciless's holstered talent is while holstered, landing a shot has a 5% crit chance to deal 100% damage. Explosive damage.
Okay. Everyone, ¿todo listo? Everyone ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Destructive, so they're more
3,
damage.
2,
All up, I'm doing 78%.
Dale.
Thanks for the like bomb. Roll. Thanks for the like roll. Much appreciated, buddy. So it heavily relies on getting.
I just need someone to cover me over here in 45 on the right side. You guys, your left, my right.
I got you.
Good.
I just haven't been able to find the large guys for the What's the fun
Otra vez.
No.
Why is he doing all the way over there? What the hell are you doing, Boomer? What the heck?
Alguien agarra la torreta. Nick, get on the turret, bro. Get on the turret. There's nobody on the turret. You're next to it.
No.
Lo agarra por ahí. Get his check, get his backpack.
Sorry. Don't go down.
Shoot him. Is it one?
No.
That shit's face.
Shoot him. Yeah, you gotta take his backpack down.
I'm taking him to 41. Take somebody.
I got the eye.
Somebody else has got the eye.
I got the eye.
Get off the turret, bro. 41, go to 41. But not that way. Clockwise. Never mind.
I'm fucking down.
Warning.
6, you got the eye, get out.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Ya me pegó el ojo.
Okay, that piece.
Yeah, I'm in the middle, man.
Shoot down the NPCs, guys. Nobody's shooting anything. Shoot down NPCs. Charlie. Levanten la montaña si pueden. Kai, he's on you, Kai. Hop over. Oh, no. No lo pueden traer por el medio. Siempre frente del medio, guys.
Ya lo agarré.
El lápiz.
Ya lo agarré.
Pero ¿quién lo tenía cerca?
Se lo voy a tumbar.
Ahora.
Yeah, he's down.
Lay into him, guys. Lay into him.
Tengo el ojo.
Sí.
Lo voy a traer. Corner 41. NPCs, NPCs. Alpha.
Ah, mierda, yo traigo el ojo.
Solo 45.
Muévanse a 45.
Sí. 45, 45. Taking CTs out, taking CTs out. As you go.
Hay un NPC en la 45 en la torreta.
Sí, 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 güey.
Para casualidad.
Justo.
La torreta, vamos.
I got it.
Sí.
I got the eye. I got the eye.
Alright.
Ahí voy. Wait. No. La va a matar, la va a matar.
Ya la rompí.
No. El pecho.
Down.
He's down. Damage. Daño.
Guys, I am doing. We need to do a double here.
No.
Get that node down straight away. Get the node down straight away. 41. Don't worry about 45 because
No.
it's already. Somebody swap him
No,
out.
yeah,
Alright, somebody swap him out. Alright.
White.
Just wipe it.
Aquí lo que estoy viendo que todos nos estamos basando en pegarle al todo. Entonces lo más recomendable sería que los que más daño traemos sería pegarle al por ejemplo los Nemesis, pegarle al gordo y los demás limpiar.
Sí.
Se supone que todo el mundo esté limpiando, porque hasta yo
Sí.
mismo estoy limpiando hasta que el boss cae y ahí la no cuando se va a levantar para yo tirarle. Vamos, lo estamos haciendo bien.
Yeah, everybody has to keep an eye on NPCs and clear them out. Everyone, I know, everyone's trying, but some people aren't really killing NPCs when they should. Don't wait for Boomer to go down. We'll let you know he's gonna go down.
Yeah, if nobody gets a shot off, don't worry about it. I'll take out most of the damage.
Yeah, Wonton's doing most of the damage on he's doing like really good damage, so just clear out ads, everyone, okay?
A las 3.
Okay.
Uno.
Shit. Espera, no está en la 45. Ahí voy.
1,
Ey,
2, 3.
See if you can put it out of commission. Defense system noted.
No le tienes que traer hasta atrás, está bien la tía.
Nice.
Ahí está. Going down. He's going down. Down. Cayó. NPCs, everyone, NPCs, kill ads, please. Kill ads. I'm bringing them around. Bring them around. Okay. He's gonna go down. He's going down. He's down.
Good. Delta.
Delta.
He's down.
Good
Bien.
41. Getting 41.
Okay. Clean. I got the eye. Tengo el ojo. Fuck. fucking sniper. La torreta, alguien la
No alcanza ahí.
turret.
Voy.
Turret,
No,
someone in
vaya,
turret,
ese
someone in turret. I got it,
fucking
I got the chest piece. Someone in turret.
Mantenga.
Bueno, bueno.
Down. Damage. Okay. Good, one more time. Una vez más.
Seguro.
Va a caer. He's gonna go down. No. Ya caí.
Yo.
He's down.
Salte que te van a matar.
Not done yet. Kill him. Please, guys.
Te tiré el dron, me tiré en el medio y se da lo que era ahí. Cabrón, pero se hizo,
Clear.
por la hostia.
Clear.
Okay.
That was harder than it should have been.
Right? At least we got the monkey out the back. You smooth sailing from here.
Le hicimos harto daño esta vez, en menos.
Issue, I mean,
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah. Ready.
it's alright though.
Yeah. Got it.
Todos tienen sus llaves, me imagino.
No,
Sí, yo
no,
sí.
ya,
El pingüino no. Kai, you haven't got your keys. Have you?